President Biden wasted no time getting to work after taking the oath of office. The president signed 17 executive actions, many of them reversing decisions made by President Trump. But future legislative goals could be impacted as the Senate already has a packed agenda between cabinet confirmations and, as we mentioned, President Trump's second impeachment trial. For more, I'm joined now by Lynda Tran and Leslie Sanchez. Lynda is a CBS News political contributor and Democratic strategist, and Leslie is a CBS News political analyst and Republican strategist. Great to have both of you strong women with me here tonight. Lynda, let's start with you. In addition to signing a number of executive actions, President Biden is sending an immigration reform bill to Congress, which would give millions of undocumented immigrants who came to the U.S. as children a pathway to citizenship. Why was it important for the Biden administration to start with this action?
Well, Lana, in some ways, there's no greater repudiation of the Trump era than to pass some comprehensive immigration reform legislation or to sign executive orders that turn back some of the more aggressive moves that the former president made on undocumented immigrants living in the United States or coming to the United States. Let us not forget that it was not very long ago when President Trump's zero tolerance policy led to the family separation crisis that tore 5,500 families apart, more than 500 of whom the ACLU says have still not been reunited with their families. The movement by the Biden administration to treat undocumented immigrants as human beings who should not be relegated to the status that they had during the Trump administration just stands in very, very stark contrast with what we've experienced over the last several years.
And Lynda, what are some of the other big pieces of legislation that you expect to see the Biden administration send to Congress right away?
Well, President Biden has already made clear, in fact, this was a major part of his general election campaign, that he's definitely going to be prioritizing what they are calling a Build Back Better economic plan. That's investing in American infrastructure, creating jobs, especially in the clean energy sector, and also expanding health services. That's certainly going to be something that will likely come up earlier, sooner rather than later. He's also telegraphed in more recent weeks and months that he is going to be interested in closing the gun show loophole and requiring background checks, repealing the tax cuts that passed under the Trump administration, which would in part go towards funding some of these new legislative priorities. And also importantly, and somewhat unique to President Biden, the 1994 Violence Against Women Act is up and due for being signed into law again, and that's certainly going to be another focus for this administration. In addition to those pieces of legislation, as we've already seen as part of the roster or the rack of executive orders that was signed today, this administration is going to make climate change and addressing that impending crisis a major priority. So I would certainly expect to see legislation related to achieving net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050 as well.
All right, Leslie, President Biden has already said $1,400 stimulus payments will be part of his coronavirus relief proposal, trying to get that number up to really that $2,000 that Democrats, congressional Democrats, and President Trump had all supported, but Republicans had blocked. And some Republicans supported higher stimulus payments just a few weeks ago, aligned with President Trump. So where do things stand now? Is this something that will continue to have bipartisan support now that that Biden is actually the president of the United States?
There's certain aspects that will have support. The $2,000 was actually one of those areas where many Republicans had more consensus around that amount. Some felt it was too high. A lot of that failure rests on Mitch McConnell, and he was blamed not only in the Senate, but also for the results of the Georgia Senate runoff. So there was a lot of blame going around with respect to that. But I think you'll see consensus on that. Certainly with respect to supporting the states, supporting education, supporting small businesses. You know, we've seen PPP, the additional rounds of funding for that. But we're looking even beyond that on infrastructure. Where it's going to get into, and Republicans are great at this, is looking, they say, the devil in the details. Where and how expensive this final proposal of the president's going to be. And they're going to be moving back and forth trying to find the right number and the right solution, and a lot of bargaining. But that's the positive side of moving these things slowly and carefully through the Congress. And I see that as tremendously a positive for Republicans.
And ladies, today we saw for the first time in the 244-year history of our country a woman sworn into office as the first vice president of these United States, an Asian American black woman sworn in by the first Latina justice. We're all three women, immigrants or daughters of immigrants, and women of color. I wanted to give you guys an opportunity to say, from differing parties, what this moment in history actually means to you. And I'll go ahead and I'll start with you, Leslie.
Thank you. You know, the most important and profound image that you saw today was that someone like us, that was always the expression, someone who looked like all of us could actually be president. People would tell you that as a little girl, but you never really saw it. And that's why this moment's so important. There are so many children around the country who were really experiencing this for themselves and realizing that could be part of their reality. And that is such a difficult thing to institutionally change and culturally change. And now, with the ascension of our new vice president, it happened. So that's a celebration for everyone, regardless of their gender, regardless of their ethnicity. It's really part of the best parts of being an American.
Lynda?
I couldn't agree with Leslie more. I mean, I found it hard not to cry my makeup down onto my dress today as I was watching that moment, the swearing in of the new Vice President, Kamala Harris. And, you know, I think about today and my 9-year-old daughter being riveted and connected to the screen, you know, watching every moment as if it was, you know, her favorite Disney movie. She was just so fascinated. I mean, it's all of these things that Leslie said about there being a model and evidence of what could be for so many little girls watching from all around the country. You know, today was not Democratic history, it was American history, and it meant a lot to so many of us.
Well, it is lovely, those moments where we can stand aside from our roles in parties or as a journalist and just appreciate American progress and moments of American history that we get to live through. But there's still a lot of work that has to be done. Lynda, Senate Democrats have the slimmest majority possible. How much does the president have to worry about members of his own party going against portions of his agenda?
Well, you know, Lana, the math is tough. I mean, 50-50 split with the vice president casting a deciding vote if it is divided along those party lines. That means that some more moderate Democrats and also moderate center-leaning Republicans have immense power in this congressional makeup. You've got people like Joe Manchin of West Virginia, John Tester of Montana, Kyrsten Sinema of Arizona on the Democratic side of the ledger, but then also Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins, who have, as we've seen over the last several years, been pivotal decision makers and power brokers in major pieces of legislation and in essentially deciding whether or not the commander-in-chief is successful in pushing his agenda. So, you know, the math is tough, and it is certainly going to come down to leaning on the relationships that Joe Biden has developed over his many years of public service, in particular serving in the Senate. And it's going to come down to, and I think this is a good thing for the American people, but it's going to come down to shared interests and shared values and negotiating things rather than this sort of my way or the highway approach that we've seen recently.
All right, more things that we will have to dig into at another time. Lynda Tran, Leslie Sanchez, thank you both.
Thank you.